Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a wonderful day. Today, I have for you a special edition of everything you need in the form of a wildcard edition. We shall be looking at my updated wildcard 30 draft, the comments Arteta made on Saka and whether we should or we shouldn't be buying him and whether I think he'll start. We'll be looking at Haaland's injury update and how that affects the potential triple city up that we could now go for with more security. We'll be looking at the assistant manager strategy. We'll be looking at chip strategy and a whole host of other things. So if you do enjoy, if you get any value out of this video, then do consider subscribing. And we have now surpassed 7,000 subscribers. So for that, I'm very, very, very grateful. Thank you very much. And if you enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like on it as well. Without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into it. Let us start with my updated Wildcard 30 draft. There are 11 spots here which I would say are locked or very close to being locked, and 4 spots in particular which are up for grabs, which we will touch on. The second thing to note is that just before I was about to film, the news regarding Haaland's injury came out. So there is a slide after this where I will discuss that and the potential impacts that can have on Wildcard 30 and the opportunities it opens up. However, off a quick glance, I guess you could say, of how that affects the structure, I opted not to make any adjustments even with that Haaland news. And that's somewhat instinctual, so I will think about it more and more. But as of now, my team won't have changed resultant of the Haaland news. So let's start with the 4 spots that I guess are up for grabs, and then we can start to discuss the rest of the team. Hillman, Todibo, Asensio, and Gordon. So why? Why in the first place do I have a West Ham double up in defence, and why have I got rid of Saliba and Dan Burn? So my thinking is with Saliba, he did block Saka, and following Arteta's comments today, which we will also have a look at, I wanted at least to have my route to Saka open. Let's say they lose to Real Madrid in the Champions League. I'm pretty sure Saka will then go on to start both games in 33, especially if he actually is as fit as Arteta made him out to be. He loves to play Saka in pretty much every game anyway. So having him for Ipswich away, Palace at home would honestly be not just a great option, but a potentially great captaincy option as well, especially now that Haaland will be missing that. So I didn't want to block myself from that route, hence I thought I would open it up. And the reason I've gone for one of the West Ham defenders, I've gone for 2, but the reason I replaced Saliba with a West Ham defender is I'm looking to bench boost in 33, as the chip strategy on screen shows. And they have a wonderful fixture with Southampton at home. You could argue it's the best one. And then from a strategic perspective, they work quite nicely afterwards, obviously free hitting in 34. In 36, they could have a double should Forest beat Manchester City in the FA Cup semi-final. Alternatively, even if they don't, they'll have a fixture in 37, which is quite useful considering that quite a few teams are going to blank and you're going to have those teams in your squad in the game week prior for the double game week 36. And then they also have Ipswich away in 38. So towards the back end of the season, I think there's actually quite a bit of utility to be gained from these West Ham defenders. So that's the first reason I've done that. The second reason why I've sold Dan Burn, only got to Newcastle here and gone to Todibo, is on Bench Boost 33, I was 100% selling Dan Burn. And what I thought to myself was, I would rather save that transfer just so I have more down the line to help myself in 36 and 37, because I do genuinely think there could be some quite big opportunities there. And I think it could be quite wise to save some free transfers for that. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I already like the West Ham defence. It'll serve me well on Bench Boost 33. I could potentially go there anyway, like from Burn to Todibo. So I may as well just start with it and save myself the transfer. Now, naturally, I lose the fixture of Leicester away in 31, and I lose the double of Man United at home and Crystal Palace at home in 32. It's essentially, for me, I would be benching Gabriel in 31 and Gvardiol in 32. So it's Gabriel for Everton away, Gvardiol for Crystal Palace at home, plus 4 points if you count that as the value of a transfer, versus Burn for Leicester away, Man United at home, Crystal Palace at home. I can see him only keeping like 1 clean sheet out of those 3. Like I can definitely see one of Palace or United scoring, and then let's just say for argument's sake, Palace score out of the Leicester away game and the Man United home game. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them went on to score as well, right? The other thing is with Gabriel and Gvardiol is they've got 15 pointers there. So if they do have a good game, or even if they don't keep a clean sheet, but they pop up with a goal, considering I'm starting 4 points ahead as I'm saving a transfer, I think it makes it beneficial in my position where I don't have free transfer stored to do that. I'm prepared to take on Newcastle's defence and Dan Burn in that fashion, for now at least. It also gives me the opportunity to potentially use a transfer elsewhere in 33. Maybe, let's say, Asensio, who I think will have a start against Brighton, a start against Forest, and a start against Southampton. Maybe by the time we get to 33 and Villa be knocked out, I look at Newcastle at home and City away. I think, okay, transitions. Let me go get Rashford. Maybe I take more secure expected minutes in the form of Rodgers, or maybe I can just keep him because he's in such good form and Emery's going to play him even at City away, right? And then in that case, the only transfer I'll use is Gordon to Saka. That would be the plan, right? So those are the main talking points about the team in terms of what I've got now. What changes could be made? Well, Anthony Gordon is a really interesting one because he did have a minor knock in the England camp. The scan was fine and he should start, from what I've seen, against Leicester in 31. But given it's his first game in a while, at least for his club, maybe sees reduced expected minutes. And I can envisage, especially with United and Palace's back three, back five, however you wish to interpret it, they maybe make it a game that is actually quite difficult for Gordon stylistically because he won't have much space in behind. There won't be as many transitions. And they could just frustrate Newcastle in that sense. Like they've gone away to other sides, other good sides, and made it difficult for them to score. So in that case, should I just invest in Jacob Murphy? And then should I just upgrade Asensio to someone like Phil Foden? Maybe even go Cole Palmer for the next 3 weeks and have him for the Ipswich home fixture and start him for that. Or maybe I go and get Phil Foden and then maybe he doubles in 30. Well, he is going to double in 33. And maybe I just don't worry about Saka and just let Foden keep going if he's going really well. And if not, just use 2 free transfers to get out the 2 midfield spots for, like, let's say Saka and Rashford in 33 and guarantee myself more minutes. Those are all options and those are all things I'm considering. I could just go Gordon and it would be facilitated by going Gordon to Murphy. In terms of the other spots, I obviously spoke about them all yesterday. I really don't see anyone else leaving the team. I mean, Marmoush is probably the most nailed asset out of anyone here. Salah, I actually can get on board with not having Salah because I do think that Liverpool will be a much worse side without Trent. All you have to do is look at the Carabao Cup final and the lack of Trent on that right side really hurt them. And in 31, they were away at Fulham, and that's like that type of mid-block. Fulham in particular, away. That's the type of game where you really, really, really want Trent. Everton could be a bit difficult if they struggle early on. Liverpool, and then they're lacking that all of Trent's capabilities. I wouldn't be surprised if Salah doesn't go as parabolic as he has done in previous parts of the season, but there's no one else really to have in that spot. Unless I go like Saka and play 4-3-3 and save myself a transfer, or I go Palmer, but I'd probably be transferring Palmer out, and Salah's got such a good fixture in 33 for that bench boost, and he's Salah, right? So I think I'll keep him. Everyone else I think is, fairly obvious. You've seen him pretty much all the drafts. Cliver is someone I've seen in and out of drafts. I like the fixture in 30. I think he can provide really good utility in 36 as well if he has a double and not having to make a transfer there. If not, I'll have a fixture in 37. Wonderful. And the other thing is, with someone like him, who looks so good and has so many things going for him in terms of FPL, so like zone occupants, penalties, shot volume, and just the quality of player, right? I think it's in my best interest to keep him. And yeah, sure, I might not get one more fixture out of him, but I think over the long run, especially saving the transfer there, it could be quite a good play. And I wouldn't even mind captaining him this week if I knew his expected minutes were guaranteed. So that's all of that. Let's say you weren't in my position and you had a different set of chips. So instead of the triple captain, you had the assistant manager. What changes to the wildcard would I make? Well, in this particular case, I think you could transfer out Ismail Assar to one of like Savinho or Rashford, go early for the doubles, right? Like both of them are going to double in 33. Savinho's obviously got Leicester at home. And we will speak about Man City more in the next slide. I think that's something you can do because realistically for 32 and 33, as we will come on to, you're probably going to want Oliver Glasner. You're not going to be bench boosting in 33 if you have the AM in 31, right? It's literally not possible. So then you can get rid of the West Ham boys and you can get Burn, and I think it's more feasible, right? Because you can just leave them on the bench in 33. You don't have to use a transfer in that fashion. And then maybe a Tottenham defender, because it's very much a case of when are you going to go bench boost, right? Are you going to bench boost in 35? Are you going to bench boost in 36? You could even bench boost in 38. I did have a look at that. And we'll come on to that down the line. And Tottenham have an okay fixture in 35. They could double in 36, which would make it more attractive to have one of them as well. And then there's a similar line of thinking with Martinez to either Vicario, for the reasons discussed, or Pickford, right? And you could go an Everton defender as well, because let's say you're going to bench boost 35. Well, got quite a nice fixture, and I think they've got a pretty good one in 37 as well. So that's everything on my wildcard draft. Look, it's subject to change, those 4 spots in particular. I doubt anything else does. And I would love if you have a really strong opinion, for you to share it with me in the comment section and tell me, okay, like you really don't like Gordon, you'd rather have Murphy, you'd rather have Saka earlier on. I don't think I'm gonna start with Saka earlier on. I don't think he's gonna start against Fulham. I realized I made a mistake when I said they have Fulham earlier on in 31 away. It's obviously Everton 31. The point still stands because it's still a difficult fixture, and it's a similar-ish type of fixture. I would say Fulham would be harder, but they've obviously got Fulham this week, and I don't think that he's going to start that, right? So it doesn't make too much sense for me to go to Saka this early when I don't love his prospects for 31. 32, I quite like it for Brentford at home, right? But I guess I'll be okay biting the bullet and not having him. And the other thing is, it's kind of difficult to even get him in the team because Salah, he plays. The Newcastle mid has to play. The Crystal Palace mid has to play because they're doubling. And then if I do have an Aston Villa asset, well, then I'm just going to play him for Southampton away, especially if it's Asensio. Yeah, anything you would like to change about this draft, please do let me know. I know the West Ham defense won't be too popular, but I'm okay going without Dan Burn and prioritizing my bench boost in 33 a little bit more, but mainly 35, 36, 37, 38, just a little bit more than other people are doing at the moment. Right, now Manchester City have just released a statement that it is unlikely that Erling Haaland will see the pitch anytime soon. And what I can tell from what the journalists have said and the statement, he will be available for the Club World Cup and potentially the back end of the season, but that will be a bit more touch and go. I guess from the statement, I personally gather that he's not going to play the first game in 36. The game in 35 is a month away, and it really didn't sound like he'd be back in a month. And then given the game in 36, the first one, Southampton away, there could be two, there could just be one, is 5 weeks away. Personally, I don't think it's the best game to like reintegrate him in from the start if it's touch and go, if he's only like 80% fit, because why would you take the risk, right? With all due respect, you should be able to get the job done without using him against Southampton. So I don't think there's much utility to be had there. 37, he'll either have Bournemouth, right? Or he'll blank, which is, again, not ideal, and then it's just 38. So for me, he's in the void for the rest of the season, and I don't think you're really going to have to think about him. So that makes it much easier to commit to the triple city up, because realistically, there's not much that's going to change from now. Stones is due back in 37, so is Ake. Akanji is due back in 34. So yeah, Kusanov will have some risk in terms of his expected minutes, like down the line. But at least in the short term, there's a lot of utility and value to be gained from him. And I really do think there is. I mean, Leicester at home, there's a chance for a clean sheet there and a good one. And then fixtures like, for example, Everton away and Villa in the double, even United away, Palace at home only to some small extent. Overall, it's a good batch for clean sheets. But personally, I wouldn't mind it. Diaz, he's just, I would say, more secure for expected minutes down the line when Akanji and Ake and Stones come back. But like I said, Ake and Stones are back so late that it shouldn't have too much of an impact. And with Akanji, maybe he just slots into right back because Núñez hasn't had the greatest time in that position, right? So I actually think going like double city defense, there's value to it. But where most people will be looking, I feel, is Phil Foden and Savinho, especially Phil Foden. My issue with Foden is I'm not sure if he starts every single game. If we just assume, right, he goes Gvardiol, Kusanov, Diaz, Edison, and then Rico Lewis or Matthias Núñez at right back. Nico Gonzalez plays every single Premier League game. And in every single Premier League game, he's accompanied by one of Gundogan or Kovacic. Marmoush plays up top. Then it's very much, a structural thing. Does he want to use like two midfielders who primarily operate in the half spaces and inside in the form of, like, let's say, Foden and De Bruyne? But how often have they coexisted this season? Well, not really often. And then if he does use two wingers, for example, in Savinho and Doku, then there's only one spot in that midfield. And at some point, De Bruyne is going to play, right? It's not like he's not going to play the entire season. And if it just so happens to be that combination, De Bruyne could play in the middle. The other thing is, as much as I don't like Bernardo Silva on the side, Pep clearly still does, and utilizing him in the middle to increase retention. And like I said, I think it's very difficult to envisage Foden and KDB coexisting in the same team. He could tweak the system, but then he'd have to constantly leave like two of his wings out in Grealish and Doku, or Grealish and Savio. I don't think Grealish is going to get the nod for too many games, right? So when you can't guarantee like start after start of the start, I do think it makes it a little bit more difficult, especially if he acts as a blocker to Saka. I would love to buy him, and I'll think about it more because I think from a stylistic perspective, the fixtures are there for him to take, especially like Leicester at home, even Everton away. Like, I really like the double for him, right? I really like the double for him, and I can see him like doing some damage against Man United. I'm not sure if he'd start the Palace game, just given the transitional threat of the opposition. But yeah, that aside, I like the fixtures. So it could be the case where like I have him and Asensio, and I just bench Foden in 32. And then when we get to 33, I'll reassess. And if I just want to move him on to Saka, I can do that, right? And then maybe just go for a Foden punt in the short term. Like I said, I'm just thinking out loud. I'll go over it a little bit more. But for me, I do think Foden's a bit of a risk. Savinho, I just don't think his output is warranting of a selection in your midfield when those spots are so precious. The other thing is, I'm not sure, again, if he starts every game, because all it takes is them to use like a slightly different system. So, for example, against Bournemouth, you had the fullbacks a lot higher, and like the attacking players were very much like inside in the field, congested. That's not really what like Savinho would fit into. So, maybe he misses one game, and that's just not ideal because the whole point of a double is that you get an extra game. As soon as you miss one, especially if you start the player, it's not great. Now, just because some of you will be watching this video with your phone in your pocket, I will read to you what Arteta said instead of telling you to read it on screen. Saka is ready to go. All the careful thing is already done. All the careful things are already done. It's about putting him on the grass in the right moment. He's pushing. He really wants it. We have respected the timeline. We had even hold him back. He's ready to go. And then a journalist, I guess it was either like before this or after this, asked could he start, essentially. And Arteta said, yeah. The thing is, this guy lies every single press conference to us, and he has done so for pretty much the whole season. I don't think he'll start. I think it's a big risk just to get him to start after this type of injury in particular. It does sound like he's been like okay-ish already for a while now, and the training pictures, he does seem quite happy, and he's training with the team, so that's all good. But let's just assume that it's a big risk whether he starts this week, because I really do think you are at least coin flipping. I don't love the fixture in 31, Everton away. 32 I do like, but is it worth going there so early? Well, like I think it's very much dependent on like if you have Gordon. Let's say you don't have Gordon, well then all of a sudden like you can bench him for the next 2 weeks, and you can have him for 32 because you can have like, for example, Jacob Murphy, right, playing in that spot, and you'll get Jacob Murphy's double in 32 as well, which is wonderful, and the fixture in 31. But if you do have Gordon, I think it's a little bit more difficult. Maybe you view it in terms of opportunity cost. You're not going to be able to have Foden and such because you block a spot. You're not going to be able to have Palmer. So for all of those reasons, I personally think that you can just wait a couple of weeks, and it's better to use a transfer when you consider the opportunity cost and the fact that I don't think he starts this one. And yeah, he might start Everton, but I don't love the fixture personally. That's my current interpretation of it. Like I said, subject to change, and I will have, I wouldn't say a finalized team in solving your problems, but close to it, certainly. Moving on to chip strategies. And I think there will be two main general chip strategies which people are looking to employ. Should you have your wildcard, triple captain, bench boost, and free hit left? I think it's very much a case of wildcard 30. And we're going to come on to wildcard 30 versus wildcard 31. Bench boost 33/32. And the reason it's in brackets is because I like it a lot less. Free hit 34, which I think everyone in the strategy will be on. And then triple captain either 36 or 32. I'll talk about wildcard 30 versus 31 in the next side of the slide after. The bench boost in 33 will probably get you an extra fixture. So I think that's already a positive. The other thing is, it depends who you're bench boosting in 32. I do think, for example, let's say you bench boost like Guardiola. You don't even really want him to do well. And if he does do well, then your Palace assets that you bought in won't have done so well. You're limiting your upside in that sense. And let's say, for example, you're going either Rashford or Rodgers, and I kind of planned out what like front forward start for Villa in each of the Premier League games coming up and the Champions League. And I wouldn't be surprised if like both of them didn't start, or only one of them started against Southampton. So again, you're reducing the potential ceiling of your bench boost. I also prefer the fixture 33. Just look at like, for example, like Salah away at Leicester, and even Isak against like a tied Aston Villa would be really, really interesting. So I'm still on the side of bench boost 33, and that's the reasons why. Triple captain, I mean, 36 was meant to be Haaland's, right? Southampton away, Bournemouth home. I was looking at that and I was thinking, okay, I'll have a bit of that. To be honest, I'm pretty comfortable triple captaining Marmoush in that double game week ahead of like Isak for Man United at home and Crystal Palace at home. And I may very well do that. Who knows? Maybe I even just like go Clivert. Maybe, I don't know, Ollie Watkins on fire at that point and I go him. So I personally do think I'll save it for 36. and just ride it out in 32 and see whatever Isaac gets up to. The alternative strategy is, I guess, for most people, if you don't have the triple captain and you have the assistant manager, I would be going wildcard 30, we will discuss, and 31 to 33. I mean, you'll get more fixtures than if you did 35 to 37, which is a big thing, especially with the assistant manager. Like, it's not like a player. This is a much bigger deal. And you'll get a lot of table bonus fixtures, which I like. And again, we will come on to because there is a slide on the assistant manager. Free at 34, and then bench boost either 35, 36, or 38. 38, I think, is a little bit underrated just in general. There's some really good opportunities that week. And you will see that in my team selection tomorrow when I run you through the plan and the transfers of my team. 36 because it's a double, and again, there's decent fixtures as there is in 35, right? So you can kind of look at those 3 weeks for your particular wildcard and see what works better. And I would say the main other strategy that has taken place is people who free hit in 29. And I feel like if you did do that, you're almost locked into wildcard 34. Your team, you're not going to be using another chip aside from the bench boost or the triple captain in 32 and 33, and there won't be like major surgery done to your team, right? Because you will have already retained Palace assets and even some Newcastle assets as well. So those are the two main chip strategies. And now we can go on to developing them. So wildcard 30 versus wildcard 31, the debate which has certainly decreased in intensity, I would say, for the reasons you can see on screen. Firstly and foremost, one of the biggest advantages of wildcard 31 initially was the fact that you would have more information about when the doubles would fall. However, from a probabilistic standpoint, we're at about like 90% or even 90% plus in some cases of when the fixtures are going to fall. So you no longer have that advantage really over wildcard 30. Yes, you have a 10% advantage. You have a small advantage in terms of risk, but I don't think it's large enough to warrant holding off in isolation. So that's the first thing, right? The fact that the edge you had in terms of information is dramatically decreased. Secondly, you'll have a better team this week, right? You'll have one more week's worth of utility out of the wildcard. And given wildcard 30 and 31 won't be too different in terms of squad selections, where that has been the case in some previous game weeks across some previous seasons, again, just having a better team for this game week almost certainly is another big benefit. And thirdly, and I'll argue is potentially the biggest one, just given how like volatile the market is at the moment and the price changes that are occurring. So for example, like tonight, I think it's Guardiola, Mamouche, Mateta, Isaac. By the end of the game week, which is tomorrow or maybe even today, depending on when you're watching, you could realistically lose like 0.6 or 1 million, I think. And it just seems a little bit unnecessary to do when the other 2 points are taken into account. So for me, in pretty much all cases, I see very little reason to hold off if it's simply like wildcard 30 versus wildcard 31. I don't mind it if you're like super bullish on Bournemouth and you look at Evanison, you look at Semenyo, you look at Clivert, who maybe you wouldn't have on a wildcard, and you think, you know what, I'd really love a bit of that for Ipswich at home, and then go and, keep that. Maybe you look at Brentford, and a lot of people have Brentford assets that they'll be wildcarding out in the form of in Bournemouth and West End, and they'll score away at St James's Park, and honestly, I think they could. In all those spots, yeah, okay, I don't mind it too much. But personally, for me, I think I would just be going with wildcard 30 because I think, one, there's a decent amount of upside, but there's just a lot of downside to not going with any excuse to bring back that man on your screen. Now, let's go on to the assistant manager strategy for those who have him. In my opinion, it is unlikely that Glasner will have a table bonus in Game Week 31. There are quite a few variables to whether he will or not, and all the different combinations of results which will dictate that. So you can go and check the table. But very simply, it's unlikely, both from a mathematical and like footballing standpoint. Newcastle winning would basically mean that that's not the case, and as with Brighton losing. And Newcastle beating Brentford isn't like, it's, if anything, it's the most probable outcome. And Brighton losing is certainly not the most probable outcome in that game, but like it's not like the biggest stretch to make well, right? And there's other like variables to it, and you can go and check out the table. It's basically like what Newcastle are 6th, Brighton are 7th, and then Brentford are 11th, and that's relevant because Brentford play Newcastle in particular, and Palace are 12th. And it's not like Brighton have an easy game. They've got Villa as well, so that's something you have to consider. So, who would you go for in 31? Because again, I'm strictly, like, especially in a single game, I'm strictly table bonus only. in like a double game week, I don't mind like one table bonus and one not. Obviously, it's preferable, but in a single game week, strictly table bonus, regardless of what the game week is, in pretty much all cases. I'd say current preference is like Unai Emery at home to Nottingham Forest. They've got a few injury issues. If they persist, and like that really affects them, then I think potentially an informed Aston Villa side could be a good shout. However, like with Villa having the Champions League coming up and one eye on it, I think I'm not sure if they'll actually be prioritising the Champions League because realistically, for them to get into Champions League next season, it's far more likely that they get like top 5 in the Prem as opposed to going on and winning the Champions League, especially given they've got PSG in the last 8. I mean, this with all due respect, but if they had an easier tie, then fair enough, but they really don't, right? So that's that. I would say Emery's probably a decent candidate. If not, like Moyes, I think could be a cool one at home to Arsenal. That's probably my least favourite, right? So I say cool, but that's probably my least favourite. Graham Potter at home, I think could be an interesting one. Thomas Frank at home against Chelsea, I think could be a really interesting one, given we've had our problems lately. And like even when like Bournemouth are on a little bit of a decline at the moment, they're 10th in the league, right? And we were talking about them getting Champions League football, and they still could, but for Graham Potter, I think that's okay. I feel like I've confused the fixtures of like Fulham in 31 so many times, or at least like once or twice in this video. So if I have, I apologize. But Liverpool are going away to Craven Cottage in 31, and like I said, without Trent, I think that could be a little bit tricky. So for that particular fixture, I think that honestly Marcus Silva could do something there, and then Ruben Amorim at home to Manchester City because they're just really not clicking, and I think United could give them a hard game. So those are the candidates. There's enough there whereby, like, even if Glasner doesn't have one, yeah, you have to use one transfer. There's still good opportunities. And then 32 and 33, I just think you kind of have to go for Glasner, right? I mean, they've got what? City away and Newcastle away. 2 times table bonus, most probably. Wonderful. 2 times table bonus. They're in brilliant form, Palace. Their away form in particular is great. City will be weakened, especially without Erling Haaland. And just in general, they haven't been particularly great this year. And Newcastle are the type of side to go away to Palace, the type of side to go away to Newcastle and make it difficult for them and honestly get a result. Then in double game 33, they will certainly have table bonus against Arsenal, accessible to themselves and Glasner in particular, and also potentially, depending on how the results go, have it available to themselves for the Bournemouth fixture, which I wouldn't be surprised if they won as well. You know, a lot of upside go along with him. One thing I would say though, however, is I don't think that these games are as good as what we had in like 24 to 26 or 25 to 27. But just something to consider, just in case like you didn't like them and you wanted to go elsewhere, and you like found another opportunity. I don't mind it as much. I don't think it's quite a slam dunk or anywhere close. So that's what my assistant manager strategy would probably be. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, this was a wildcard special and like a chip strategy special edition of everything you need given the current landscape of the game. So tomorrow will be more of a micro video, where this was more macro. So in solving your problems and the team selection video combined tomorrow, you will have my latest wildcard team, captaincy, which I think is such an undiscussed topic this week. I mean, there are so many genuinely good options. I don't think it's anywhere near as straightforward as being like Salah, best player in the league, captain at home. I don't think it's anywhere close to that. We'll discuss Eze versus Sar. We'll discuss the benching dilemmas for those of you who have them. And then we'll look at like Villa assets, for example, like which ones to go for. We'll look at City assets in more depth as I started to do so in this video. We'll look at Newcastle assets because obviously I've got a slightly different interpretation of those. And regardless, it's a very important subject. So whatever else you would like, please let me know in the comment section and I will happily assist should like it be appropriate. And feel free to suggest improvements on my wildcard team. I actually really would like as many like well-informed opinions on the team as well, because it is so important and it will have a massive dictation, I guess, on the rest of the season and where I and you finish up. So please do let me know. And that's a wrap for this video. And that is all she wrote, ladies and gentlemen, for this one. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop a like on the video and equally subscribe. Again, thank you very much for 7,000 subscribers. And I shall see you either today or tomorrow, depending on when you're watching it, for solving your problems and team selection combined. Until then, goodbye and have a wonderful day.